Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from August 1st to the 7th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. But very happy to report that we did get the Illinois numbers right after I published my midweek update. And good news for Illinois adult use cannabis sales for the month of July is that we did jump back up to 135.6 million, which is a nice 7% increase month over month from June. And while it does not surpass the record that we set last year for total sales in December of 2021 with 137.8 million, still significant that it gets back up to 135. And then if we look at the total number of items sold, it actually turns out to be the most ever with 3,251,062 total items. So despite a bit of a pullback in May and June, very happy to see this rebound as in-state resident sales reached 92.1 million and out-of-state resident sales reached 43.5 million. And so very happy to report that Illinois is back on track as we anticipate that extra 185 licenses being handed out. So I wanted to jump to this one. So thanks, Todd, for sharing what Beacon has to say on Illinois, basically recapping the sales figures. So Illinois sales update. Adult use sales up 7% month over month in July. And so most importantly to highlight, last week, the IDFPR issued another 28 adult use retail licenses to social equity applicants, bringing the total to 177 so far. The final 8 licenses are expected to be issued over the coming weeks, pending the receipt of outstanding documentation. So the additional 185 retail licenses represents a 168% increase in the retail footprint from the current 110 sites that are active at the moment. So while additional retail licenses will make retail more competitive, it significantly expands the addressable wholesale market to the benefit of companies with cultivation and manufacturing operations in Illinois. And so obviously we cannot wait for those extra 185 dispensaries to get online as soon as possible. And so until then, they believe seasonality and holidays will be the primary driver of month-over-month sales fluctuations until those stores become operational. And so if you want to get an idea of the major players in Illinois, especially with a lot of cultivation and grow that will be able to wholesale, you got the list down here: Verano Holdings, Green Thumb Ministries, Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, Ascend Wellness, and then PharmaCann as well. And so moving on, happy to share from MJ Biz Daily that New Mexico posts best month of cannabis sales with 40.3 million in July as well. So good job, New Mexico. During the month, retailers sold a total of 40.3 million worth of cannabis, with 23 million of that from adult use sales and the rest medical, according to a news release from the governor's office. And so the July sales tops April, previously the best month to date, reaching 39 million. As June sales figures were slightly less than 38 million, but that was to be expected. And as we anticipated sales to bounce back in July for many states, we saw that for Illinois, and we see that for New Mexico as well. So just happy to report they're already seeing the benefits of ending cannabis prohibition already. So we've established a new industry that is already generating millions of dollars in local and state revenue and will continue to generate millions more in economic activity across the state, creating thousands of jobs for New Mexicans in communities both small and large. Who doesn't want that? This is how you can change the status quo for the better. So good news, New Mexico's population centers, Albuquerque, Hobbs, Las Cruces, Rio Rancho, and Santa Fe posted the highest sales in July. So again, good job, New Mexico. Keep it up. While we move over to Florida, the Office of Medical Cannabis Use, if we look at dispensation locations or new approved dispensaries for this past week, we can see many were approved from the week of August 1st to the 5th. We see Liberty Health Sciences, backed by Air Wellness, open a new one in Jacksonville. We see Move, which is backed by Verano Brands, opening 2 new ones in Palatka and in Tampa. Then we got Sanctuary Cannabis in Palatka, but I do not remember the company that is behind Sanctuary Cannabis. Well, we've got Sunnyside, Cresco Labs is behind them, opening a new one in Cape Coral, and then Trulieve opening a new one in Point Siena. Trulieve is Trulieve, doesn't need any explaining there. And so with that, qualified patient count did increase to 740,213, which represents an increase of 938 people week over week. And so while the week over week patient growth is still down a bit, it is still peak summer. And so we can anticipate that hopefully by September, those numbers will get back up into the 1,000 to 2,000 range, and then back up into the 2,000 and 3,000 week over week range. And with that though, happy to share the dispensations for this past week from July 29th to August 4th. And so we see all the MSOs listed in the state, the number of dispensaries that they have active and operating. We can see the number of milligrams of CHC sold this past week, the number of milligrams of CBD sold this past week, and the number of ounces of smokable flower sold this past week. So strong sales across the board for all the MSOs. And so you can check to see if the MSO that you've invested in is either increasing or decreasing their market share week over week in this very competitive state. While I've got this easy to digest Florida flower market share comp sheet from Pure Gilles. So happy to share this one whenever it is updated on time. And so this one as of August 5th, so yesterday, we do have Trulieve still leading the way, number 1, Curaleaf number 2, Verano Verano number 3, Certera Wellness number 4, and Liberty Health Sciences number 5. So for further breakdown, you can pause to read this. While moving along, as New Cannabis Ventures shares that June cannabis sales in 11 markets decreased slightly from May to 1.65 billion. But as we anticipated, this would be the case, and then we'd see that jump up in July. And so while New Cannabis Ventures has not published all the July data yet because it's still very early, I'm happy to at least walk you through. Not all states are created equal. As you can see, even in eastern markets alone, in June, year-over-year growth ranged from negative 9% in Maryland, a medical-only market that is putting the question of adult use legalization on the ballot in November, to 23.5% in Florida and Michigan. And so while some states might have seen less sales from May comparatively, other states might have seen more. And so this is, again, grouping them all together. But besides that, just going to walk you through them all. Now, I'm not going to read them all, so just if you want to pause to read, you can get more information on every single state. But this is for Florida, so you can pause to read. While we've got Illinois, obviously I did just bring you through the most recent July figures, and while this one does not have any July figures, it does have up to June here, and so you can pause to read for Illinois. Well, we've got Maryland down here, again, one of the markets that is struggling the most because it is still a medical-only market. And so once that adult use flip switches, that is going to be a huge growth driver for Maryland, so you can pause to read. Well, we've got news on Massachusetts here. You can pause to read for Massachusetts. And then lastly, Michigan, you can pause to read as well. And not lastly, we got Pennsylvania as well. And so Pennsylvania, the last of the eastern markets, keep in mind Pennsylvania is still also a medical-only market. As much as we'd love to see another adult use initiative on the ballot in November, the good news is that GOP senators in Pennsylvania have already expressed their intent to craft cannabis legislation for adult use that they hope to pass in 2023. So hopefully they don't keep us waiting too long. While we move on to the western markets, we got the first on the list. Arizona is the youngest of all these new markets, and so you can pause to read about Arizona. And this big spike is when they started to tally or at least keep track of their adult use sales after legalizing for adult use. Well, we've got California, the biggest market in the country, so you can pause to read a little bit more about here, and imagine we're going to see a big bounce back up into July. Well, we've got the most mature market in the country, Colorado, so you can pause to read, but very happy to report that at least in the most mature market in the country, we did see a jump up from May into June, and I imagine we're going to see some sales, some bigger sales in July as well. And with that, we've got Nevada also working its way back up, so very happy to share that, and so you can pause to read about Nevada. And then lastly, we've got Oregon down here, and so you can pause to read. So happy to report that across the board, sales are still strong and steady, although they might not be heading back up in that direction. We're going to keep our eyes peeled for July. And also on that note, just wanted to add that New Jersey has still not published their adult use sales figures for May, June, and July. Obviously, I want them, and once I get them, I will share them with you as soon as possible. But just to relay that we have not gotten those yet, or I have not been able to find them. So if you can find them and you have the link, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, once I do get them, I will be happy to share them. And so with that, on to Green Thumb as they share their second quarter 2022 results on August 3rd. And so just to recap the highlights for the second quarter and 6 months ended June 30th, 2022, revenue increased 4.8% sequentially and 14.6% year over year to $254.3 million. And I imagine some of that was helped by New Jersey finally launching. First half 2022 revenue increased 19.4% to $496.9 million compared to the first half of 2021. 8 consecutive quarter of positive GAAP net income, delivering $24.4 million or 11 cents per share and 10 cents per diluted share. Adjusted operating EBITDA grew 17.4% sequentially to $78.7 million or 31% of revenue, while cash flow from operations of $39.9 million year to date. So just wanted to share the highlights essentially. Now this is not advice as well. If you want to go through the whole thing, you can grab the link below. But again, I just don't want to spend too much time going through this and making this video too long. And so just happy to relay that Green Thumb did see some sequential growth as well, and further proving that New Jersey's been that helpful growth drivers that all these MSOs have been hoping for. And so with that though, just wanted to share Sayshu's earnings takeaways so that he breaks them down a little bit deeper than I can. And so I just want to relay what he shares for Q2 earnings from Green Thumb. So thank you, Sayshu, for sharing this as well so I can share with my audience. So you can pause to read from the first little bit, and then from 3 down to 4, 5, and 6, and 7, so you can pause to read. Then down from management said all the way down to 11 state level commentary, so you can pause to read. And then from PA, no growth until edibles and or adult use, all the way down to 12 as laid out above. It's a mixed bag out there. Some states may be reaching through, while others may be getting worse. Time will tell. From 13 all the way down into M. So again, thank you, Sayshu, and hopefully you can find some good nuggets in there, especially if you're looking or interested in investing in Green Thumb. And with that, there is an interview from Yahoo Finance. Cannabis, inconsistent U.S. regulation is Prohibition 2.0, Green Thumb CEO says. While I will not play the video because it is a long one, I do recommend grabbing the link in the description to tune in if you're interested in Green Thumb or if you are a shareholder of Green Thumb, because Ben always comes with the facts. He's a great speaker and he highlights the reality of the situation on the ground, not what the news is trying to get you to pay attention to. And with that though, just got to contrast Green Thumb's earnings to that of Canopy Growth Corporations as they report their first quarter fiscal year 2023 financial results. And so just to highlight, Green Thumb is a US MSO, so they're growing high THC cannabis and selling it in legal states to Americans, whereas Canopy is a Canadian LP, therefore they can only sell high THC cannabis to Canadians or any medical patients they have across the globe, while they can also sell CBD products, across the US and Canada, but just to highlight the differences between the two because they are not the same whatsoever. And so we can see their first quarter fiscal 2023 financial summary, and this compares Q1 of this year to Q1 of last year, full year 2022. So remember, these figures are in Canadian dollars as well. So net revenue, 110.1 million, down 19% from Q1 a year ago. Pretty awful. Gross margin percentage, -1. Ugh. Adjusted gross margin percentage, 2%. Net loss of over 2 billion, which is down 635% from a year ago. Adjusted EBITDA, -74.8 million, down 18% from a year ago. And then free cash flow, -142.8 million, which is actually a 23% improvement from a year ago. So just to share this, just sharing this because it's a good laugh at the expense of Canopy. So this is why you want to stay away from some of the overvalued, still not even, but stay away from some of the Canadian LPs and try and focus on some of the fundamentally strong U.S. multi-state operators. And so just to highlight, the cost-saving program announced earlier in the quarter, combined with sound expense discipline, contributed to a meaningful decline in operating expenses during the quarter. We expect cost savings to ramp in the second half of the year, maybe ramp up in the second half of the year, enabling us to execute on our path to profitability, even as we continue to invest in strategic growth initiatives, including in BioSteel and our U.S. THC ecosystem. That ain't happening until cannabis is descheduled. And this comes from Judy Hong, one of their newly hired chief financial officers, just filling the script, replacing whoever unfortunately left as the former chief CFO. And so with that, on to some other news from Marijuana Moment, though. State lawmakers across the U.S. call for federal cannabis legalization and banking reform in revised resolution. So just to highlight that the support for SAFE is still there. Momentum does continue to build. So just to highlight that the nonpartisan National Conference of State Legislatures has voted to adopt a revised policy directive that expresses support for federal cannabis descheduling and cannabis banking reform amid the state level legalization movement. So happy to see that they also support descheduling. And so while does this really mean much? I don't think so. But again, just happy to show that the support is out there and it is building. But the measure, which builds on an existing directive that NCSL passed in 2018, was approved at the organization's 2022 legislative summit on a voice vote on Wednesday. So whatever that means, just happy to share that there is still constant support, especially from state lawmakers across the country, as many of them are from legal states and states that have legalized in some form, whether for adult use or medicinal. But with that, happy to share from Marijuana Moment that Booker says there's Republican support for safe banking plus cannabis compromise. So this is sort of what we expected them to pivot to, and it seems like they are sort of moving that direction, so we just have to wait and see if time will tell and if they will continue to move in that direction. But happy to relay that Since filing the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act, however, Booker has characterized himself as a compromise guy, ready and willing to work with his colleagues across the aisle to get something done on cannabis policy before the end of the session. And so with that, that something will likely be what's become known as Safe Banking Plus. That combines protections for financial institutions that work with state legal cannabis businesses with other reforms such as expungements for people with past convictions and industry access to federal Small Business Administration services. Schumer has been holding bipartisan and bicameral talks about what such a cannabis omnibus bill might look like. So obviously we would rather hear this than not hear it at all. And so this comes from an interview that he recently did with Cheddar News on Wednesday. So you can grab the link below and tune in if you'd like. Not going to play the whole thing, but you can just pause to read for a bit of the snippets and highlights that he adds here. And again, just having Booker behind Safe and then Safe Banking Plus and behind a compromise that we can get before November, that would be the best case scenario that we've all been holding out for. And so with that, some snippets from an investment firm. So thank you, Todd, for sharing this one. What Camilo from BTIG has to say on Cresco Labs. But the main reason I share this one is just because this snippet featured from Apparently to It. As apparently, Senator Booker is already working with other members to draft legislation for Safe Plus, which could potentially include some or all of the following: a 280 provision, uplisting language such as the Climate Act, Veterans Affairs, and SBA loan language. As to date, there are at least 15 Republicans in support of Safe standalone and more than the 10 needed to pass. Now the discussion is what else can be attached to it in order to maintain at least 10 Republican votes to get some sort of Safe Plus passed from now until November. And so just happy to share that. Take this with a grain of salt, though, as it is still speculation, but we'd rather hear this than not. But just to highlight, management meetings focus on positive Safe momentum, acquisition closing, and a strong brand portfolio, reiterating a buy target at a 16 Canadian dollar price target for Cresco Labs. So this is again Camilo from BTIG on Cresco, so you can pause to read or you can grab the link below. Well, we've got another one from Roth on U.S. cannabis. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one. Weekly rehash, Q2 2022 cannabis earnings, week 1 preview. Main thing is the calendar, second quarter earnings ramping up next week. We highlight 3 key themes investors should monitor when digging into cannabis companies. So we've got number 1 here, number 2 here, number 3, so you can pause to read. But more importantly, we believe this quarter will begin to show the bifurcation of leading MSO brands executing operations efficiently versus lagging operators. So we're going to see who's the dominators and who is struggling to keep up with the leaders of the pack. And so with that, happy to share that Trulieve opening medical cannabis dispensary in Kissimmee, Florida. And so just sharing this one as it is an opening as of August 4th. However, I don't believe Kissimmee, Florida was featured in the update of dispensation locations that were approved this week. And so I don't know if it's the same one. So that would mean this could be the 119th or it could be the 120th, an extra one for Trulieve. But so nonetheless, just happy to share that Trulieve keeps expanding in the state of Florida, not caring what anyone else is doing, as the new dispensary expands patient access to medical cannabis in the state of Florida, of course, and grand opening specials are available. So you can pause to read more about those grand opening specials for the patients in Florida. Well, happy to share that Verano is relocating to a better location that they think will help drive more sales. So good job, Verano, as they welcome Maryland medical cannabis patients at prime new location Zenleaf Elkridge. As Zenleaf Elkridge is relocating from its former home on Montevideo Road, located less than 15 minutes from Baltimore Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport. Zenleaf Elkridge features enhanced amenities, including a larger store space, additional registers, and parking spaces, as well as a drive-through window, hence why they likely moved to the new location, highlighting that Verano's active operations span 13 states, comprised of 107 dispensaries and 13 cultivation and processing facilities with more than 1 million square feet of cultivation capacity. And I do think it's wise for them to get into Maryland, as Maryland is working on putting cannabis adult use legalization on the ballot in November, and I imagine that they're going to vote an overwhelming yes. And so with that, just to add a bit of context, according to the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, there are currently over 158,000 certified medical cannabis patients in the state, while Maryland medical cannabis sales are projected to potentially reach $750 million by 2026, as reported by MJ Biz Factbook. Obviously, that will be helped by adult use sales launching. And so while they might, legalize for adult use with the ballot initiative, doesn't mean that they're going to launch the program. It's going to take some time from that to the program launching, but nonetheless, obviously, once that launches, that will help Maryland and sales for those in the state certainly by a lot. And so with that, Vermont begins accepting cannabis retail licenses ahead of legal sales. So good job, Vermont. Keep forgetting a lot of smaller states are set to come online as well, as I think Rhode Island too is set to launch in the coming months. But regardless, Vermont's Cannabis Control Board continues to accept applications from those seeking as businesses prepare to set up shop. And so not much new information in here besides business owners just very excited to get this going, but is happy to relay that applications will continue to be reviewed by the board in the coming weeks, as rec sales are set to begin in Vermont on October 1, less than 2 months away. So hopefully there will be no delays, and good thing that Vermont is taking initiative and getting this going so that they can launch on time and get that ball rolling. Well, we've got this one out of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Very interesting. A Massachusetts publication writing about a producing plant in New Jersey. What is going on? But nonetheless, how do they grow all that weed inside a new 270,000 square foot pot producing plant in South Jersey? And so if you're interested in learning more about Columbia Care or Cresco Labs, as they do have a deal to merge by the end of the year, you might be interested in grabbing the link below and reading more about this one, as Columbia Care's new cannabis growing facility in Vinland, New Jersey is almost the size of 5 football fields. And so that is how they would compete in New Jersey, especially as a wholesale leader down the line. And so with that, wanted to share this last one from Todd Harrison, as we did hear that Arkansas might not qualify for the ballot initiative. Well, Arkansas's cannabis campaign files lawsuit to put legalization measure on the ballot after state's board rejection. So highlighting that not all states practice democracy, sadly, as we're seeing shades of South Dakota a few years back, where the citizens voted an overwhelming yes to legalize for adult use, only for the governor to step in and basically say, yeah, no, I know better than all of you who voted for me to represent you, and we're not doing this, which is absolute horseshit, and we're seeing it again out of Arkansas, which sucks. Sadly, this time around, it's the Election Commissioners Board is thwarting the will of the people in their right to adopt laws by initiative. That is wrong. That is not right. And so if I lived in Arkansas or South Dakota and I saw them trying to warp, democracy right in front of my eyes, I'd get the fuck out of there as quickly as possible. Sadly, not everyone has that luxury. And I do believe Arkansas was just going to be voting for medical, not adult use. I'm not exactly sure, but, let's just hope that they can win that lawsuit so they can get this on the ballot and get access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative sooner than later. But so with that, happy to share some studies. So I wanted to share this one. Thank you, Kurt Robbins, for sharing this study, Cannabinoids for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. And so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll put the link in the description. But mainly just to highlight, this is an older study from May, but it was updated in mid-July, and the study found some positive results that cannabinoids like CBD and THC improved overall PTSD symptoms, including sleep quality and quantity and treatment-resistant nightmares. The main reason I share this is to highlight that all 3 of these factors revolve around sleep, and I imagine in the past, anyone that had PTSD and these symptoms would likely just be given sleeping pills and told that this is the solution that you need. When, hey, if we can add THC or CBD to sleeping pills, or if we can even just use CBD and THC and remove the sleeping pills, hospitals. Even better, especially for the lives of those veterans suffering from PTSD and not getting the attention or the respect that they need, especially from the lawmakers that keep them hanging dry. And so with that, marijuana moment, new study says legalization hasn't caused more teens to try cannabis. And so while I've shared many studies that say the same thing, this is a new study finding the same results. So the more data we can collect, the better to say fuck you to those prohibitionists. And so just happy to share the new paper, funded in part by the National Institute of Health, claims to be the first ever publication to examine incidence of use, or when people initially consume cannabis as a result of adult use legalization. Past studies have instead focused on prevalence, trying to measure legalization's effects on how much cannabis people use or how often they use it. So they found there has been no policy influence on cannabis incidence in the underage adolescent population after adults have been allowed to buy cannabis in retail shops. So take that, prohibitionists. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can grab the link below if you're interested in learning more. So just wanted to share this as another reference for epilepsy. It's another far too common condition that we see in adults and children alike. But here's the thing. Time and time again, study after study, I don't think we found a medicine that is as effective at stopping seizures as cannabis. And the reality is, it's so sad to see parents suffer due to the lack of prescribing in both the NHS and private sectors. So this is obviously a publication out of the UK highlighting that parents that have children with epilepsy or anyone with epilepsy is suffering because they cannot get access to medical cannabis or cannabis that has the THC or the CBD or whatever has the formulation that's required to help their symptoms. Well, it's nothing short of infuriating. It's another prime example of how changing the status quo for the better could actually go a long way in helping kids get access to medicine that they need. Because kids aren't going to just be ripping bong every 5 minutes, much like every prohibitionist seems to think is going to be the case. No, treat cannabis oil like a bottle of Advil. You're not supposed to take more than 2 Advils every 4 hours. Don't take more than 2 cannabis drops every 4 hours. And boom, seizures are gone. Parents are happy they can live their lives. That is how things could be if we change the status quo for the better and deschedule cannabis. And this is the worst part. A mother facing possible prosecution because she just wants to get the medicine that's going to help her kid that's accessible to many other people around the globe, has called for high-strength cannabis oil to be available on NHS prescriptions to stop her epileptic son suffering life-threatening seizures. And I hope she can get this case. I hope she can get what she needs. I hope she doesn't face prosecution, but it's just another, I can't. It's infuriating. So with that, last few ones from Nats Vertig. Today, Biden called Brittany Griner's 9-year sentence in Russia for cannabis possession unacceptable. Are you kidding us, Biden? Because the reality is, it's not much different for Americans in your country. As meanwhile, a former NBA player was being arrested in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas airport for possessing 6 ounces of cannabis, a felony in Texas. And so it's not rules for thee, not for me. It's Biden. You can talk shit about Russia and saying what they've done is unacceptable when you keep your campaign promises, deschedule the plant, and release nonviolent criminal offenders from prison. That would be great. And so lastly, just wanted to share this one from Lawmakers. If you're interested in learning about how much of a kerfuffle the Canadian market has become, exclusive. Canada's licensed cannabis producers destroyed a record 425 million grams of unpackaged dried cannabis in 2021. What a waste! You could have given so much of that to me, and probably many of my subscribers on here, far exceeding the amount they were able to sell. Since 2018, a stunning 900 million grams has been destroyed because, again, Canada did it wrong. They built as many large cultivation facilities and grew as much cannabis as possible when, let alone, we only have 40 million Canadians. There's not much cannabis needed. So what a royal waste. And so this definitely makes for an interesting read if you wanted to grab the link below. And this is an easy step-by-step guide for the U.S. to not do what Canada did, and they'll fare much better. But so just to highlight a few things, this is what you get when you grow massive capacity before you even identify customers or even knew how to produce what they wanted to buy. And let's not pretend that the lion's share of this destruction didn't happen at the biggest of LPs. I imagine it affected all of them, but more importantly, Canopy Growth, Aurora, Hexo, Organogram, and likely Tilray and Afria before they merged to become that new entity. They likely did not suffer as bad as some of the other big ones because they didn't aim as big, but because they managed to come together in time. And so with that, quantities of intentionally destroyed packaged cannabis in 2021 include millions of little plastic packages containing little cannabis buds. How sad. And then more importantly, just to round off, is apparently a Globe and Mail story, one of the largest publications in Canada, yesterday said that there was no easy answer to explain massive losses at a company like Canopy. So the Globe and Mail just doesn't want to do journalism anymore because I, much like Matt Lemurs, humbly completely disagree. It's simple, basic economics. You grow too much, you don't sell enough, you lose money. The fact that the Globe and Mail can't report that and just wants to huddle alongside the CBC and be Trudeau's propaganda machine for the regime is infuriating. But nonetheless, it's just simple. If large LPs can only sell a fraction of what they produce, then that is exactly why they are losing so much money. And it just infuriates me that, again, the Globe and Mail, much like other publications, cannot just do honest journalism anymore and explain why Canopy is a failure. But I am hopeful that things will get better, and I am proud to at least be one journalist or reporter with some credibility At least I feel that way. And while the story has not happened yet, it is still a when not if scenario. So hopefully you can take advantage. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.